Good evening, Fernwood. It is your sexy semi-centennial Neil, and it's time for us to get sensitive with another episode of Mary Hartman. Mary Hartman. We're watching episode 281 from May 2nd, 1977. We were hit with a really major bomb last week, which was that Dennis Foley has returned to Fernwood. But before we talk about where he fits into everything, let's sift through the rubble. The Glorious Guardians of Good are a secretive white supremacist organization led by Vernon Bales and Police Chief Texas. They've been building up their membership in Fernwood, though most of the members are completely ignorant of the group's racist agenda. Tex himself murdered Howie Freeze and Dewey the janitor, and the GGG leaders are framing Tom Hartman for at least one of those crimes. The other members of the group, like George and Charlie and Mac, think that they are trying to help Tom by bringing a lawyer and a psychiatrist to help him out. But Vernon only wants to discredit Tom by having him declared insane. Mary Hartman has been struggling since her husband Tom was arrested and put in jail, and Tom is angry not only because he is locked up, but because he knows that there are people out in the world who really are aiming to sweep Mary off of her feet while she is vulnerable. Namely Merle Jeter and Dennis Foley. Police Chief Tex has been tormenting Tom and left a bottle of whiskey in the hopes that Tom's alcoholism would resurface. Dennis Foley is back in Fernwood and back on the police force after having adventures out in the world. He's there to have a quiet life, and he says he doesn't intend to contact Mary. Mary Hartman's friends and family all know that Dennis is in town and are hoping to protect her from learning that. George Shumway has let it go to his head that Vernon Bales named him the Grand Misto of the GGG. That's probably a made-up position, and probably George was nominated because Vernon thought he'd be ineffective. Martha Shumway has moved in with her daughter Kathy, and Kathy is starting to feel a bit crowded. Not only that, she's angry that her boyfriend Max seems to be paying more attention to her mother. George also really misses Martha, but he's put off with the thought of having to compete with Mac. Wanda Jeter has been jealous of the attention that her husband Merle has been paying to Mary Hartman. Merle has been creeping on Mary for several months now, usually appealing to her inner child. Loretta and Charlie Haggers have been in over their heads trying to get their Bigfoot-raised feral child more socialized and civilized. They tried to have the kid baptized, but that ended in chaos. However, at least the wild child seems to like Dennis Foley. And last Friday's episode started with Loretta and Charlie meeting with a social worker so that they could start the process of adopting the wild child. Mary stopped by to offer her character witness for the Haggers, and the child comes out for some mild chaos. Then the Haggers get the bad news that if they do not enroll the child in school, he will be taken away from them. Tom woke up in his cell after a night of drinking to Tex continually tormenting him. Tex used Tom's jealousy of Merle Jeter and Dennis Foley to stoke his rage before Dr. Williams could show up for their interview. Tom tells the doctor of the various schemes of the GGG and that he is being framed for murder and that Merle and Dennis Foley are after his wife on the outside, and Dr. Williams assumes that Tom is going mad. And then finally, at the Capri Lounge, the Haggers and Kathy bring Mary out to distract her from her sadness over Tom being locked up in jail. Kathy is no longer speaking to Martha because she thinks that Martha is stealing Mac. Merle and Wanda show up, and Wanda really wants the night to be just about them, but Merle seems to think that he's sharing Christian compassion with Mary. One by one, the members of Mary's party get hip to the fact that Dennis Foley has entered the building, and they urge Mary to leave, without telling her why. Merle notices the change in the table across the room, much to Wanda's chagrin, and Mary struggles to finish drinking her water to leave when she drops her purse to the floor. And the two former lovers come face to face again. We have varying opinions on Dennis Foley on this show, so I guess all we can do is begin.
Mary Hartman! Mary Hartman!
Hello, Mary.
What are you doing here?
I'm back in Fernwood. I couldn't stay away.
You couldn't? Why? Forget your sneakers and
You look great, Mary.
No, I don't. Your hair is still curling.
And yours is still in braids.
Yeah. Hey, look, everybody. Hey, look, his hair is still curly. Hey, look who's here. Dennis Foley's back in town.
It's okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh, okay. So, how long are you going to be in Fernwood?
Oh, I guess it depends.
Oh. On what?
Events.
Well, you still talk the same way you used to, that's for sure.
You haven't changed either.
I can't make out what they're saying, though.
Get off the floor!
Well, something is definitely up. Now, I think it's your duty as mayor to investigate.
Damn you.
Can that man really be who I think he is?
Mary, honey, can I talk to you for just a second? I'd like to just bring up a little something that I feel is important right here, which is I'd like for you to just think of Tom being all alone in the clinker for a second, Mary. Don't you think, hon, that he just might be a smidge upset if he knew you was here talking to Dennis? Seeing as how he almost broke up your God witness marriage and all.
It would not make his day.
I think you're right, Mary.
Yeah, well, listen, we were leaving anyway, so...
So was I.
Oh. So then what should we do?
I say that we should all vamoose, Mary. Yeah, let's go.
Listen, no, wait, everybody, we're really behaving like children. I mean, this is really silly. It really is. I mean, no, this is really silly. I mean, everybody knows what this is about, and it's just silly. I mean, for us to pretend that we're going to avoid each other is ridiculous. I mean, Dennis and I, we both live in Fernwood. We both shop at the Federated, and it just doesn't make any sense. I really think we should just get it all out in the open, Right now, I think that's what we should do. In fact, that's what we... Listen, everybody, I have an announcement that I would like to make right at this particular time, something I'd like to clear up a little misunderstanding that's been going on, and I feel that the best way to do it is to take the past and just bring it out into the open, okay? So now, Dennis Foley, whom most of you know, probably some of you have heard of, you know, whatever, and I made a mistake once. Why don't you stand up, Dennis? Why don't you stand up, let everyone see it? Yeah. Now, this, here he is. This mistake was just a little tiny, you know, indiscretion, transgression. It took place in a hospital, and we were both under, you know, an extreme amount of pressure at the time. I mean, just extreme. And then just for some really strange reason, which I'll never understand, everybody found out about it. And I'm just here to tell you, and he's here, you know, with me to tell you that it's all over now. It doesn't exist, you know, this, it's gone, it's over. And isn't that right, Dennis?
You're just beautiful.
No, Dennis, you're supposed to say, that's right, Mary. Just say, that's right, Mary, that's all. Isn't that right, Dennis?
You're just incredible.
Look, all right, okay. Look, I have an even better idea. I really do. I have an even better idea. Why don't we all, just all, like, sit at the same table and discuss, you know, old times, you know, clean times. You know, like, you know, like being old friends, clean friends. You know, like that. So why don't we do that, okay? Oh, and by the way, I also see absolutely no reason to mention this to Tom. I mean, really none at all. So, Dennis, why don't you just sit down here? Why don't you sit down at the
My pleasure.
Merle, Wanda, why don't you come join us, Ma?
Tell them I lie, tell them I cry, tell them I die of the same.
Hi, Wanda Sue. How are you, honey? How
Just
you doing?
terrific. Couldn't be better.
Oh,
Come on in, honey.
Oh, thank you. You too. Come here, boy. Come on, darling. Sit. Isn't he an adorable child?
Well, so this is son of Bigfoot, huh?
In the flesh. Well, actually, I should say in the buff, because we can't get no clothes on him.
Well, tell me, how about a cup of coffee? Or maybe a small T-bone for the child?
Thanks a lot, Wanda, but no, hon, I can only stay for just a second. I just wanted to talk to you for a minute here.
Oh, my, doesn't he have a hearty appetite? Tell me, he doesn't eat doilies and upholstery, does he?
No, not so far. He doesn't. Hon, don't drool. Now, don't do that, darling. Don't drool on the food now. Now. Oh, gosh, this looks good. Do you mind if I have one of those?
Oh, please be my guest.
Thank you. Fabulous. Well, anyway, Wanda, the reason I did come over, I'd like to kind of talk to you. I wanted to ask you about this kind of unfair law that Fernwood seems to have, which states that all children must attend school whether they was raised by a Bigfoot-type monster or not.
Loretta, not that I mind little Tarzan climbing up there among my priceless glassware. Isn't it dangerous up there?
Darling, it's exercise for him, because he's used to, honey, no. Hey, cool it on that glassware. Darling, no. I do apologize for that glassware.
Thank you.
Anyway, what I did want to ask you, hon, do you suppose that you might ask Merle if he could just kind of take a peep at that law for me?
All school decisions come under the aegis of the Board of Supervisors, over which Merle has no authority. But speaking of which, how do you discipline the boy if he doesn't speak English?
Oh, you mean how do I discipline him?
Yeah, just for an example, if that were Heather treading on my tasteful Belgian velvet settee, Mary would probably reprimand her.
You mean yell at her?
Yeah, just kind of let her know right from wrong.
Well, hon, I've tried yelling at him. I've just yelled my guts out, to tell you the truth. But, hon, it just don't seem to do no good at all. And it does just plumb tear my heart to pieces because, see, he don't understand what that means. He don't know about yelling. All he understands is a roar or a growl or something like that.
You
know?
see, Loretta, the plant that the boy has just eaten is not important. True, it was my prize Hawaiian chef Lara, but what is important is that you learn to say no and that the boy learns to understand you.
You're right, Wanda. Hun, no! No! Now you stop that bad boy. No! See? It don't do no good.
I'm afraid there's really only one way to get the point across.
How's that?
With a really good spanking.
Oh. No, Wanda. I mean, there must be another way. I couldn't.
Oh,
do
but
that.
Loretta, thousands of years of motherhood have taught us that nothing civilizes a child faster than a really good spanking. To let him know that you care.
Oh, well, Wanda, I definitely do care. I love it.
Of course you do, darling. To let him know that you care enough to teach him good manners.
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, maybe you're right. Johnny Doe, darling. Now, no! Now, you get away from that plant right now. I'm just going to have to paddle you. Do you hear me now? No! I'll tell you something, Wanda. This motherhood business is not coming easy.
That's true. That's why I've always steered clear of it.
Well, Texas, old buddy. After that hearing on Friday, not one single citizen of Fernwood will take Tom Hartman seriously.
That's what I like to hear.
The psychiatric report says that he's hostile, aggressive, and paranoid. All we need now for a little icing on the cake is that bumbling, incompetent Nathaniel Dearborn, who is late, which is a good sign.
Vernon Bales, Nat Dearborn. I took the first bus I could get as soon as I got your telegram.
Well, I'm very pleased to meet you. This is Texas, my associate.
Howdy.
Well, it was very good of you to leave your research and Mrs. Gimble and come back to Fernwood.
Oh, the battered wife book will keep. So long as husband and wife keep going at it.
Well, guys got to sow his oats somehow.
Oh, shut up. Mr. Dearborn, we have a very important case for you to handle.
Oh, I suppose it has to do with Tom Hartman. Or as the Fernwood Courier says, Fernwood man up for murder, arson suspected, possible forest fire. All in all, I'd say it doesn't look a bit good.
Oh, you trying to say you think he's guilty, right?
No, I don't say that. The law states that a man is innocent until he's proven guilty. But all I meant was that it does appear as though he doesn't have a leg to stand on.
Well, perhaps this case is just too big for you. After all, it's not your usual petty domestic squabble.
Oh, I've handled murder raps before. Pat Gimble was known as the Christmas tree murderess until I got her off without a hitch. Of course, I did have a peeping Tom witness.
Well, there'll be no peeping Toms in this case. You'll be flying solo.
Well, I'll
So
do
if you think you can handle it, the case is yours.
Well, I'll do my very best, Mr. Bale, but if he fries, he fries.
Oh, I understand, but we mustn't anticipate. No, what you're trying to say is that you cannot guarantee a not guilty verdict.
Mr. Bales, I'll be frank with you. I can't guarantee I'll show up in the right courtroom, but I will do my very best.
Yes, well, that'll be fine. Mr. Dearborn, you are a gentleman. I understand you were an excellent clown.
My circus days are over. I traded my rubber nose for a law book.
Good man. Good luck. Goodbye.
Oh. See you in court.
What are you doing here?
No, you're supposed to say who's there.
What are you doing with those keys?
Oh, Texas gave them to me because he was sure that you wouldn't use them. He knew that you wouldn't try to escape or anything because he said that you knew that it would damage your credibility at your hearing.
What the hell difference does it make? Nothing matters anymore anyway. What the hell?
Whoa, will you just look at this place? I mean, just look at this place. I mean, this is dingy, dingy, dingy. That's what it is. This is what you need here. Look at that light. Just a little light. It's plenty of light. Would you prefer it over here? Would you? Here, I can move it right here in 1 second. Would you prefer that? And you know what else I have for you? Look what I have. I have a nice little rug for you. What do you think of that? Now watch this. You throw it on your floor. You can walk on it. It's just like this. Simple like this. You can sit on it. It's like this. Or you can do anything else you please on it. And I have here the next little item. It's a very cheerful little item. It is a Jimmy Carter poster. Now how's that, Tom? Look at that smile. Do you think he had bridge work?
Who cares about smiles? Who cares?
Hey, come on. I'll smile like you, and you take one of my smiles. Well, Tom, I brought you some underwear. I brought you some towels. I brought you some T-shirts and stuff like that. In fact, what I did was I brought you everything you could possibly need, to clean up except of course razor blades. And I bought your favorite slippers, and I bought strings for lovers only, an album.
Listen to me. I don't have a stereo in here. I mean, who cares about all this stuff? I mean, that's all surface stuff. I don't need smiles and posters and albums. I mean, who cares about that? I don't need it. I mean, you know what I need? I need to get the hell out of here is what I need. That's what I need.
I can't do that.
I know. Come here.
I can't do that for you, Tom. I wish I could, but I can't. Texas might be coming here.
I don't care about Texas, huh? Let him get his own girls. Come on.
Tom.
Come on. If I were Dennis Foley, you wouldn't do that to me, would you? Huh? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have.
That is so unfair. That is so unfair. I mean, of course I've seen Dennis Foley at the Capri Lounge just like the rest of the neighborhood. And you knew that all along, and you didn't tell me that he was here.
No, I didn't tell you he was here because I knew damn well you already knew he was here. That's why.
Just trust me, Tom. Why would you trust me? Nobody will trust me.
Hey, come on. Come on, don't. You're gonna get it all over the rug when you cry like that. That's it. Smile. Come on. Yeah, smile. I'm sorry. Now, give me a hug. Come on. That's it. A hug and a rug. Huh? I love you.
I love you.
Hey, listen, hey, next time, okay? Hey, bring me my electric razor, huh? What do you say?
Yeah, sure. I brought something else that I found this like in a little store, and it reminded me of you, sir.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. That's nice. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Oh, and Tom, here.
Yeah.
I have a lot of things to say, and I don't know where this is going, really, exactly. I'll address this thought, though, before we talk about the episode proper. I've mentioned that in this show, especially in the first season, the two ships were Tom and Mary and Dennis and Mary. Like, those are the... Even in the 1970s, that was the way that this show was being sold, was Mary having these two men in her life. And in some way, I see this as kind of a metaphor, or I see each of these relationships as a very different thing. So with Mary and Tom, I always believe that there's love inside of this relationship. And it is also a relationship rooted in the real world. That it is a relationship full of problems. That while Mary and Tom love each other, they also, in some ways, can't stand each other. In some ways, the life that they have is a very bad fit for them. And yet there's still this thing that draws them together. And maybe that's a little bit unclear, but I see this as a real world relationship, a real world love, right? Love is not just the feeling. Love is going through the problem of life in this case, right? Not just any one problem, but there's no relationship that I can think of that is completely harm-free. So in this case, I see Tom and Mary and their love as a complex and rich thing that has a history behind it, that has the commitment to each other. And then to take Dennis, the Dennis and Mary picture, this is, to me, it's the fantasy. Mary, as Tom talked about it last week, sees herself being swept off her feet by someone on a white horse. And in this case, that's what Dennis is. And Dennis, in his actual relationships that we have seen, he's been a horrible human being. In his moments with Mary, there's definitely one episode where he was pressing beyond my comfort zone and beyond Mary's comfort zone into a place that started to feel like coercion or sexual assault almost. So I don't see this as a completely clean relationship, but there's the generalization of Dennis and Mary that makes it feel like they have intense chemistry together. Right? That is something that is true. I'm not sure if Dennis and Mary actually have a good relationship outside of that chemistry. Dennis has proved that he is completely selfish, or perhaps single-minded in his obsession with Mary, right? His relationships with Roberta Wallachek and Kathy Shumway just show that he doesn't care for the people in his relationships. Unless it's Mary, we haven't really seen him in a real relationship with Mary. I'm not claiming that Mary Hartman and Dennis don't have a relationship, right? Like, they do have a relationship, and it has its own history, and it has its own pain in it. but we haven't seen them have a real commitment to each other. And I'm not sure how Dennis would behave in the commitment to the woman that he appears to love. Because, as we see in the first scene, Mary just wants to brush it aside, and Dennis can't. And that's what this first scene is, right? Getting back to the show, the first scene and the last scene kind of bring together all of these thoughts. But that first scene is Mary and Dennis coming back together, and really everyone realizing what a bad idea that would be for Mary. At least that's what they believe. I know, viewers, that some of you really want Mary and Dennis to get together. And who knows? Every one of her friends, and I think even Mary, thinks that it's a bad idea. At least Mary is aware that Tom would be hurt by it. But Dennis is completely hypnotized by Mary. And I don't mean that in a way like he's being tricked or convinced of something that isn't real. He is fascinated by Mary. Even to the extent that Wanda, who was trying to keep Merle away from Mary's table, is watching from a distance and wondering who this man is. I don't think that Wanda knew anything of Dennis Foley beforehand. I'm not sure what she has heard from Mary off screen. I don't think they talked about Dennis during the show. And Merle doesn't have anything to say except that, well, Merle doesn't have anything to say. So Mary tries to come clean with the idea that she and Dennis made a mistake. That's the way she presents it to the world. I'm not sure if that's exactly how she feels. I think that her feelings would be complicated. She made a mistake because she has a commitment to Tom that she broke. Tom also did break his commitment. I'm not letting him off the hook here, but we're talking about Dennis and Mary in this case. And Mary tries to make it clear what their past was. And she tries to set a boundary to say that we're going to talk about clean things. And we can see that's not what Dennis is thinking. And then we're at the Jeter residence with Loretta and the wild child, who really did startle me. I just didn't expect him to be there. But she is there to ask for Wanda's help in trying to keep the kid out of school. And if anything good comes out of this scene, and I'm of two minds of it, if anything good comes out of this scene, it is the thought that a child does need discipline. I'm not a fan of corporal punishment, right? Physical spanking is something that I'm not going to get into a debate with you about, but generally speaking, it's bad. I'm not sure in this case how you discipline a child you cannot communicate with, and I think that the first thing in this case would be finding a way to communicate with it, with the child. Loretta doesn't have a method of communicating with this child. And again, I do not know anything about being a parent. I definitely don't know anything about being a parent to a child with special needs, much less a child that was raised by Bigfoot. However, that's what I see is the case here. But if anything good comes from it, Loretta has figured out one method of disciplining the child. I don't know that that's going to go well. Sorry, it was the 1970s. I expect it will work out in the show, but I have my opinions about that. I feel like we've seen a couple of spankings in this series, and spankings were pretty prevalent in all of media, over the 20th century. Generally speaking, I think there are better ways to address your children, and having no experience being a parent, I can only muse about it. And then we're back in the company break room with Vernon and Tex sitting pretty. This is the most relaxed I think I've seen Vernon, because they know that Tom has been declared insane, at least enough to discredit him during the trial. And they have brought in Nat Dearborn, who looks way more incompetent now than he did when he was working with Patty. He was comically incompetent in this scene. course, shows up late, which is by design. And they bring up his clowning days. Apparently, it is very easy to transition from a life of performing as a clown to performing as a lawyer. And I have a lot of respect for clowns. That is a rich tradition, and it gets a bad rap. Usually, especially with horror movies, really making things pretty awful. But there's so many different traditions of clown that I'm not going to get into it. But there's a lot going on there. However, Nat Dearborn is on the case, and he's apparently not even sure that he can get to the courtroom at the right time. And speaking of time, it really feels like Tom is running out of it. He's in jail, as depressed as he can be, so depressed that Mary has been given the keys by text to just open the cell, which is highly unusual if you're talking about jail, prison, any of that. And Mary, again, is committed to making Tom's life better. She brings in a lamp and some new gear. And Tom just is at the deepest depths of his depression. And it gets to the point where Tom and Mary are making out, and then he tries to push it farther, but Mary is not feeling like it's appropriate there, which is fair. And then Dennis comes out, right? The idea of Dennis comes out of Tom's mouth, and it turns into, like I said, this is the reality of the situation. Their commitment has those problems. Dennis is a problem in Tom and Mary's relationship. Mary is just as mad at Tom that he knew that Dennis was in town and didn't tell Mary. But if there is a bright side to this scene, it's that Tom isn't as depressed as he was at the beginning of it. And maybe this relationship with Mary is the one thing that gives him a little bit of hope. Maybe. It wasn't stated that way, but I feel like Tom seeing Mary smile was a turnaround for Tom. That Tom seeing Mary's smile was something that could potentially give him hope. And when you're in depression, hope is a powerful thing. So everyone, that was our Monday episode. We're at T-minus 9 weeks to the end of the series. Wow, thank you so much for watching with me. Thank you so much for leaving your thoughts, feelings, and impressions down in the comments. Thank you for getting sensitive. And we will see you tomorrow night in Fernwood.